those of you who've stood out on that deck right there and looked toward the Scripps Pier, you may have seen this building with dark brown shingles, and that's the California Sea Grant headquarters. And if you haven't looked out there after I'm done, take a look. And as Nigella said, we're located here at SIO, where we are a statewide program, which I'll explain to you. We support research and outreach throughout the state of California. So what is the mission of a program like California Sea Grant? As you can see, it's a very complex and very large-scale type mission. Now it includes knowledge about the ocean, includes balancing conservation, it includes coastal generation, coastal marine sciences, and training of the future generations. We do that through a mixture of supporting research and supporting outreach on the marine environment here in California. That mission inspires our program to do the following. We take that $8 million budget that Nigella mentioned that we have annually, and we use about half of that to support marine research throughout the state of California at virtually almost all coastal universities. We also take our mission to use the results of that research and impart knowledge to the general public about the oceans. Clearly, along the way, we will be taking steps to understand and solve ocean issues and to be an unbiased source of information. The last point I want to emphasize very much, we are an organization with a science advocacy, and it's very important to us to make sure that we provide unbiased information. So what we're doing is we're collecting knowledge that we can in turn impart to folks as they make these many difficult decisions about the coastal marine environment. And we do so without taking a position. We try to provide information to help make decisions in such a manner that people are more informed. So as I mentioned, we're not alone in California Sea Grant. This is a snip from the National Sea Grant website. Here is the URL for the website up here. There are 31 Sea Grant programs in the U.S., and California is one of them. We are, as mentioned, the largest, and there are, each state, the Great Lakes and Coastal State has a Sea Grant program, and you can see them sprinkled throughout the country. They range all the way from Hawaii down to Puerto Rico, including the Great Lakes. Now, for those of you who are astute in your geography, and who have good eyesight, you'll see two yellow dots here, and what you can say is Southern California. So I've already made a liar out of myself. There are, in fact, 2 Sea Grant programs in the state of California. We are one of only 2 states that has multiple Sea Grant programs. But for the most part, there's a Sea Grant program in every state, and they have a very varied mission. But the architecture of each Sea Grant program is basically the same. There's an overarching Sea Grant program. That, in this case, is California Sea Grant. Our headquarters are located in that brown building that I showed you a picture of a few minutes ago down the hill. We take about half of our budget and we support coastal research. And I like to call it problem-solving research. In other words, it's not applied or basic necessarily. We don't make that discrimination, but we take issues that we feel need to be solved and we apply the research to those kinds of problems. For example, how much fish can we catch before we deplete the stocks? Is it okay to build a marina here? What's happened to the sand on the beach? A lot of research is needed to answer those particular types of questions. We use, as I said, about half of our resources to do that. We in Sea Grant do not do the research. We actually, in turn, support researchers throughout the state of California, not just in the University of California system, but throughout the entire state to conduct that research. What we do with our staff in California Sea Grant is we support the outreach side of the equation. Have any of you ever heard of the land grant model, I presume? The Sea Grant is modeled after land grant, and the idea is that not only should one be supporting research, but they should also be making the results available to the public at large. Not just research for research's sake, but research for the sake of solving problems. So we have a communications staff, and one of our staff is here tonight. And they take the technical results of research that we support through California Sea Grant. They boil it down to language that the average informed citizen can follow easily and make that available. To carry that one step further, we have extension staff that are sprinkled throughout the state of California. They all are posted up and down the coastline, and I'll talk about them shortly. And they actually meet with the public. They ask questions. What are the issues that are confronting you in the coastal marine environment? And what can we do to help solve it? And that drives our research portfolio. Okay, a little more history about the program, then let's talk about some of the research. Sea Grant was established in 1966. The actual program began in the National Science Foundation because in 1968, NOAA didn't exist. In 1970, when NOAA was created, Sea Grant moved to NOAA. The first programs at the universities, we are not federal employees, but we are university-based employees. The first Sea Grant programs in the states were established, and in 1973, California Sea Grant achieved its college status as part of the network. So, where are we today? Hopefully we're not here. We're a very vibrant organization. We're supporting anywhere between 30 and 50 research projects at any one time. A large bevy of students are supported by that, and it's a really very diverse research portfolio. So what I'd like to do is take the next few minutes and describe to you some of the research that we have supported. So, of course, research is about discovery and being struck by lightning. Okay, so, a show of hands, how many have gone to the hospital and think you've been operated on by a sturgeon? No, you haven't. So, sturgeon is a big fish, of course, well known for its caviar. And about 20 years ago, if my memory serves me correctly, the white sturgeon in the San Francisco Bay Area were under attack. And they were under attack for a couple of reasons. They were heavily fished. The Bay Delta was being replumbed, essentially, so we could get the fresh water out of it, so we were disrupting their breeding sites. And basically, they were failing. And another thing about the sturgeon, and I know Jeff Graham is here, who's a fish expert, so he will set me straight if I go say the wrong thing. Sturgeon take a long time to reach sexual maturity, so when the young fish are removed, the population really suffers. So California Sea Grant, working with researchers at UC Davis, began to develop the protocols to grow sturgeon in aquaculture facilities. And there were a lot of technical challenges involved with that, but the original impetus was to preserve the sturgeon stocks. We didn't want to see the population die off. Working with the UC Davis researchers that California Sea Grant supported, an entire aquaculture facility was developed near Sacramento. And you're going to say, Sacramento? Sacramento is anywhere near the ocean. You're exactly right. This is a sea farm that's inland, and everything is self-contained. We helped them develop feeds, and we helped them develop through our research that we funded, we helped them develop the processes to bring the fish to maturity at an earlier age, and that was very successful, to the point where they had enough sturgeon that they could start actually selling it as a product. Well, lo and behold, recently there's been another development, and the sturgeon, of course, are the source of caviar, and with all the problems in the former Soviet Union, now Russia and associated states, the caviar production has become very important. So the Stoltz Sea Farm is now actually developing a very profitable business in making caviar. So it was a modest amount of money, cleared some technical hurdles, and sturgeon have been thriving in the sea farm. And this is what they look like swimming around in the tanks. Pretty amazing. And Jeff, how big do they get?
This one?
Yeah.
Maybe 6-8 feet.
6-8 feet. Okay. Another study, a little closer to home. Some of you have heard of Scott Ashford here at the UCSD School of Engineering. And I think Cheryl Peach has heard of Neil Driscoll, who is your husband. And these two fellows have teamed up to do some very interesting research that we have funded on bluff stability. We actually started out with Scott Ashford, and his interest was what happens to bluffs? We've got lots of high bluffs along the ocean here in California, and they were looking at a method to predict when you can tell if a bluff is going to fail or not. So the issue was bluff stability. Is my home going to fall in the ocean like these poor people were at risk? One thing led to another, and eventually it was discovered that not only were we looking at the issue of bluff stability, but we're looking about how sand reaches the beach. And so what Scott Ashford did is he invoked a new technology that we help support in looking at bluffs. In the old days, when you looked at beaches, you flew over them with an airplane and took a photograph looking down. You got a good view of the flat part of the beach, but you got a miserable view of a bluff. What Scott Ashford did is he used a technique called LiDAR, which is essentially a laser-driven system that profiles the bluff, and he gets a good look at the profile of the bluff, and lo and behold, discovered that the bluffs were contributing an enormous amount of material through the slumping process, and that the beach nourishment was actually greatly driven by bluff slumping and not as much by runoff that they're coming out of rivers. And Cheryl's husband, Neil, was brought into the project because they can actually make a signature by identifying the different types of sand as where the source is. It's called an elemental signature fingerprinting.
I think one of the most interesting findings from our recent research is the contribution of the bluff erosion to the beach sand supply. Historically, people have thought that 10, 15, maybe 20% of the beach sand comes from the bluffs. The findings from our recent study are showing that that is well over 50% of the sand on the beach is coming from the bluffs. Now that's going to vary from place to place, you know, in San Diego County, but I think it's really a change in what the common assumptions are.
So what you saw in that movie was the actual LiDAR, the green image in the gizmo, making the profiles of the beach. Really fascinating research, which is changing the way that we think about sand reaching the beach. Okay, another study. We have these field advisors throughout the state of California that I mentioned, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. One of them here in San Diego, a woman by the name of Lee Johnson, has become very interested in the issue of the contamination of harbors through the materials that leach off of the bottom of boats. Now, you wouldn't think about this very much, but if you own a boat, you know that you paint it with copper-laced paint. But what happens is that's specifically designed to slough off the boat, and it's contaminating the harbors to the point where we have extraordinarily high levels of copper, which is a very toxic material, in the harbors of a lot of boat basins throughout the state of California. So our field agent, Lee Johnson, started working with the boating industry and the people who make the boat paints, and have discovered that there's real possibility of developing alternative methods. These are essentially very hard paints that they put on boats, and they're non-toxic. And of course, the benefit is we improve water quality, but the issue is, does it make economic sense? It's one thing to say we're going to do this, it's another thing to get boat owners motivated to do this. So Lee Johnson teamed up with Richard Carson, who is the chair of the economics department here at UCSD, and they discovered that if boat owners are given the proper incentive, at the time they haul their boat out for its normal repainting, they can actually put on these non-toxic paints that are being developed. In the long run, it's less costly. What we do through that kind of method is we get away from imposing regulations, and we develop incentives as to how to go about making changes for better for the environment and for the boaters. Okay. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to hear from Bill Fenical here at SIO. Bill has been supported in his group by California Sea Grant for many years on the issue of new marine products. And basically, this is long-term research that looks for new, novel, and interesting compounds coming from marine organisms. And it's been very productive. One of the first outcomes was the development of a material used to put in skin cream. So why is that important? Well, this material produces far less allergic reaction. It came from soft corals that grow in the Bahamas. So Bill Fennicle's research, supported by California Sea Grant, looked at the possibility of these compounds, and they found them, and now there's actually a cottage industry in the Bahamas of growing the soft coral in an aquaculture type basis, harvesting it, and using it in this Estee Lauder skin cream product. But it's not just about skin creams. California Sea Grant has supported research on a whole host of studies involving exotic compounds developed from marine organisms, and there are a lot of potential underway, including this entire list of possibilities that we are supporting. Okay, one more. What about the grunion? People know about the grunion story. There's been a long-standing tension between those who would like a clean, groomed beach and the grunion. So the issue is grunion eggs. So the grunions come up on the beach and they spawn, and when the beaches are groomed, there's a problem with tearing up the grunion eggs and causing loss of viability for the population. So we funded a woman by the name of Karen Martin at Pepperdine University, and Karen has done some research to show that if you carefully groom the beach using certain time windows of not grooming the beach, you can literally change the way in which you impact the grunion population. Okay, last example about our research project. We give out a lot of money, we support a lot of research, but we also hold back some funds, and we have what we call our $10,000 awards, or the $9.99 special. And these are funds that we use for instances when a small amount of money applied at a very crucial moment would make a difference. And this is a case in point. Behind you is a tank of sardines. Sardines aren't what they used to be in California, but they are still harvested. Rightly or wrongly, what is done with sardines nowadays is they're harvested, a lot of them off of LA, here in Southern California. They're frozen in bulk, and they're shipped to Australia to feed to bluefin tuna. There's a pretty substantial export market for this, and one of the things that came along was sardines are prone to this particular disease called viral hemorrhagic septicemia. And basically what happens is they get a virus in the linings of their blood vessels, and it causes a problem. The Australians have sardines as well as the Californians, and the Australians were worried that importing California sardines would contaminate their population, and as a result, they instantly put a ban on importing California sardines. We used $10,000 through an investigator by the name of Ron Hedrick at UC Davis, who's in the veterinary school, and he showed that through the proper handling of sardines, the proper preparation when they're shipped, as well as a ban on importing sardines for only 2 months a year, that there was no risk to the Australian population. So that $10,000 actually was used in a way that averted a total crisis with this fishery. So Jeff Graham wanted me to talk about his shark research. And of course, here's Jeff out here right now, about to take the first sample. Okay, what about other aspects of the program? Embedded in all of that research that we support is a very, very important mission, and that's in education. We feel in California Sea Grant that the single highest priority for our program is training of the next generations. And we do that through a very, very broad array of educational components. And this is a sampling, but not a complete suite of those educational programs that we support. At any given time, California Sea Grant supports anywhere from 30 to 50 research projects throughout the state of California. With every one of those projects, there is a graduate student who has a support through our program. We call it a Sea Grant trainee, and it's extraordinarily valuable. In fact, you've heard from several Sea Grant trainees at this session in the past. We also offer undergraduate training in the form of summer internships, and this is a program named after the former Renaissance scholar here at SIO, John Isaacs. In conjunction with the Cal-Fed Bay Delta program up in the San Francisco area, we offer postdoctoral fellowships. We offer postgraduate school fellowships. We send graduate students to Washington, D.C. or to Sacramento for a year after they've finished their technical studies to see if they're in particular interested in learning about the policy aspect of studying marine sciences. And while we don't operate a summer camp for K through 12, we support a lot of summer camps through our program. And finally, I'd be very, very remiss if I didn't mention that California Sea Grant is a major partner with the COSI Center, the Center for Ocean Sciences and Excellence, located in California, and particularly here at SIO, and Cheryl Peach and Sharon Franks are very deeply involved in that, and Sea Grant is very pleased to be a partner in that program. So education is a very, very important part of our mandate. As I move to talk very briefly about the outreach aspect of our program, I feel very deeply that it's no longer acceptable to do research just for research's sake, but there really has to be a way of carrying that research to the public. And so what we're promoting within California Sea Grant and many other places is something I call the research outreach continuum. In essence, it's a smooth transition from research discovery to bringing the results to the public in such a way that it provides for useful information. And that's been a driving principle of our program for the past several years now, and one that we'll continue to enhance. Okay, I mentioned about field agents. We actually have 12 field agents that are hired by California Sea Grant, and they're sprinkled throughout the state. 10 of them are located in these coastal counties, ranging all the way from San Diego to the Oregon-California border. And you see a little hole here in our diagram. You might recall early on that I mentioned there were 2 Sea Grant programs. There's a second and much smaller Sea Grant program in California located at USC, and they cover the outreach elements for the Los Angeles area. We also have 2 technical specialists located at UC Davis. In addition to the outreach mission, we have individuals who specialize in taking research results and, as I said earlier, boiling it down in such a way that the average informed citizen can readily understand. This is a trend that transitions through all of Sea Grant, including California Sea Grant, and this is, in fact, the mission of communications in general. And this fits very well with our overarching parent, NOAA's strategic plan also in environmental literacy, something we consider very important. I've showed you a couple pictures of the staff just briefly to show you who is involved. There are 13 of us here in La Jolla, and some of us spend most of our effort working on the research side of the program, but not exclusively. And some of them spend their effort working on the communications side of the program. All right, where do we get this money? Very important question. Sea Grant is a partnership. It's very different than a lot of other programs you may hear about. In the legislation that created Sea Grant in 1966, it was mandated that for every $2 in federal support that Sea Grant receives, there must be $1 in local support. When in practice, we get quite a bit more local support than that. So we get support from NOAA, federal agency that is located in Washington and is in fact the parent for Sea Grant. We also get support from the state of California. We get money directly from the Resources Agency. We get support from the University of California. It comes from the Cooperative Extension Network, which in fact hires those field agents I mentioned. And we get support here from the University of California, San Diego that helps keep our program going. Those people that we provide research projects to indeed come to the table with some money, and that's what we call grantee contributions. And then through partnerships. We have a lot of partnerships outside of these normal lines that provide a lot of support for our program. So Sea Grant really thrives on partnerships. We can't begin to do what we do alone. We're located here as a matter of great pride, because where else should California Sea Grant be but at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, where we discharge our activities throughout the entire state of California. And we have a long list of partners, and this is just some of them. Okay, at this point, I hope more of you look like this than this. I'm not sure. Can you all read that? So, that is the end of my story.